Welcome to the Tea with Martha, where we spill the tea on the untold truths and real struggles of entrepreneurship. I'm Martha Pachow, a fellow business owner who's learned the ins and outs of business the hard way. Get ready for unfiltered discussions on the highs, lows, and messy realities of entrepreneurship. It's time to spill the tea and vent it out with us.
Welcome to another episode of The Tea with Martha. My guest today is a sweet friend of mine, Candy Kinney, and we are friends from a business, faith and business mastermind. And I just love Candy because she has a wealth of knowledge in building her business. And we always chat about all the fun and sometimes not so fun parts of building a business. So Candy, welcome to the show. And I can't wait to spill the tea with my listeners.
Thank you. I'm excited.
So Candy, tell us a little bit about you and your business.
So I am a family nurse practitioner, and I went to school specifically to own my own practice. And so that is what I do. I have a wellness practice. I started it in 2019, right before COVID hit. Literally, I started in September of 2019. COVID hit in March of 2020.
Oh.
So it was, I mean, there's just never been anything like that. That was just world changing. But thankfully, God had my back. And throughout COVID, we grew this practice. And so within 3 years, I had opened a second location. So I have 2 locations, and I have another nurse practitioner who I hired to work at that other location. And it has been the most challenging, heart-wrenching, but amazing thing that I've ever done for myself and for my family.
Absolutely. I can relate to that for sure. So, as it relates to this story, when you kind of like what has been like the real challenge that you've overcome either recently or in the startup phase? And there's always phases and seasons within our business and even in our own life, right? How we show up and what's going on, kind of just internally and that's how we managed our business. So how, what is, spill the real tea, like tell us the real story on, I don't know how fun it was, but when you opened your second location, maybe, or, I have a lot of stories like that too. And you think it's a great idea. And then what was I thinking? But now you're knees deep, right? So anyway, I won't speak for you, but yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
I think that there's phases. So I think that the challenges at the beginning are different than the challenges a few years in.
Mm-hmm.
I think definitely the challenge at the beginning is, especially for those nurse practitioners who work for someone else, which most of them do. I think the challenge at the beginning is just overcoming the fear of, what if I quit my job and open my own practice and I don't have patients? Or what if I, start it and I don't make enough money to replace my income?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really big fear at the beginning. It's around money when you're first starting. You're afraid to let go of that security blanket, which is your job, So I think that's the challenge at the beginning. And then as you grow, because when I started, I was literally by myself. I answered the phone, I made the appointments, I checked the patients in, I did it all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start growing and then you add employees and employees. I couldn't do it without them, but that is truly the biggest challenge that I have encountered in this business is just managing other people.
Yes.
It is so challenging. So I think that's the 2 biggest challenges. And then opening a second location, like you said, it seems like a great idea at the beginning. You're like, oh, 2 locations. I can open another location and it's like running without me and making money. No, probably not.
Yeah, it's definitely every season has its challenges. And, It's like they say, new levels, new devils, right? Just when
Yes.
you figure one out, you go to the next phase, the next level, and there's challenges there too. And so it's like an ever never ending, just journey. And I have found that as we work on ourselves and yes, our systems and putting some organization in place, things seem less painful. There's still challenges, right? So how did you overcome that? Did you hire more people? Did you how did that look on the other side of, oh shoot, she called off today and we have, day full of bookings, and who's going to do that? There's only one of you
Yeah.
at two offices, right? So
Yeah.
how did you figure it out? How have you made it successful?
So that second location's been open about a year now, and thankfully she has not called out. She's amazing. She has a great work ethic. And so
Mm,
God really blessed me because our meeting was just like so God ordained. It was such a like chance weird thing. So thankfully
mm,
she has not done that. But I did just recently hire a third nurse practitioner, and she's going to work 2 days a week in my clinic. So she'll work
mm,
2 days a week in my clinic. And that way, I feel like if that ever came to it and I needed her to work there, she
mm-hmm.
totally could do that. So for about a year, I've just been flying by the seat of my pants and thinking, okay, God, don't
Yeah,
let her get sick, but it's been working out really great so far. So
that's
that hasn't
awesome.
been an issue. Yeah.
You sound like you're me. Like I jump and then I'm like, I'll figure it out later. This sounds like a great idea right now. And then I'm like midair thinking, will this parachute open? Like, is
Yep.
everything going to be okay? But God always
Yep.
pulls through. And, I think that there is some value in those risks that we take.
Yeah.
Um, I've definitely lost some time, definitely resources, and just, probably a lot of hair in the process. But
Yep.
I value that too, because that's when you really just rely on God and know that I'm trying, and taking risks is part of the process. And it's beautiful to see, even
It
if
is.
you win some, you will learn some, is what I say.
Absolutely. And I think as entrepreneurs, I consider myself a visionary. I
Mhm.
have literally 1,000 ideas all the time. I'm like, we could do this, or we could do that, or we could, as a visionary, that's part of my gift
Yes.
is seeing all the possibilities.
Yes.
But then, part of that not being my gift is seeing the back end and how that actually works. So
Uh-huh.
being a visionary is great, but it can also be, my husband, who is my business partner, he's in the background going,
Mhm.
I don't know about that one,
Mhm.
but it is, I think being an entrepreneur, that's part of it. You go for it. And there are people who are just not built like that. But when
Mhm.
you are a true entrepreneur, you just go for it and you just figure it out.
Mhm. Mhm. And I do think also, as I think of the visionary, the integrator type of person, who's the one that's going to land the plane and say, okay, let's, how are we going to get from point A to point B, from point B to point C, and so on and so forth. We need those people in, not only in our companies but in our world, right? Because if we were all visionaries, good Lord, we would never get anything done. I know
No.
I'm like a go go go, but I like to get things done. Like, if you want something done, give it to me. However, it might not have all the details in the middle, like it's just one
Yeah.
of those things. Like, I've recognized that my superpower is being a visionary, is taking risks, is, knocking on doors and figuring out what's the next thing, and having a million ideas, and then collaborating also with my husband, who is risk averse. And he's an analyzer, and I used to get mad, like, why don't you see what I see? Why don't you understand me? Why are you holding me back? And then I
Yeah.
learned that, as much as it's really hard, and I still have a hard time, like, I'm not going to lie, but I'm trying to remember the value, and I need someone who's going to not stop me, because that's not his intention. He wants to make sure that we're going to be okay, right? That
Yeah.
I'm not going to just jump off a cliff and not have a parachute. And so we need every single one of those people who, and even in my business, on my leadership team, I have amazing ladies. They're all a little different, and they all bring a different value that I don't have, thankfully. It's taken a long time to find people like that. I used to want to hire people that were like me, or, it just, I figured out I need people who are going to fill the holes that I have.
Yeah.
And those detail oriented people are my jam now. Like I used to be like, I don't understand why it's such a big deal. Why do you need to know every detail? Like, just get it done. And,
Yes.
and there's such beauty in that now. I value my team. That's reminds me of, okay, I know you want to do all these things. We need to time it. We need to put it on the calendar. I'm like, no, we just need to get it done tomorrow. So
Yeah.
anyway, it's just beautiful to have that gift, but also to recognize that we need the implementers and not just all the visionaries. And
Yeah.
have you used EOS or some type of program to help just kind of organize in this season of having multiple locations and who's going to do what, or what's helped you?
So my husband is my business partner, and he kind of does all the back end.
Mm.
So he does all of the office things. He does the HR things. He has a background in HR. He's a HR. That's what his degree is in. So he kind of deals
Nice.
with all the back end HR type of things. But I think the best thing about him is, as a visionary, I think that is a great superpower, but it is a very debilitating downfall too, because sometimes when you're trying to avoid something, you're like, oh, well, I have this new idea, let's do this instead. But when in actuality, you're just avoiding the thing that needs to be done. And so I love
So
that
good.
he's able to rein that in and say, okay, you just said you need to finish this thing, and now you have this whole brand new idea. You're just avoiding finishing the thing. And so I think that that's really great to have people, like you said, that are different from you, who can point out and say, "Mm, yeah, that's a great idea, but not now,"
Right.
and that's what
Right.
he does for me. He's like, that is a great idea, but not now.
Mhm.
Finish the thing you're working on.
Yes.
Stop procrastinating on that thing and get it done. Because like you said, I could just come up with a million different ideas all the time, work on them a little bit, and then go on to the next one and then never
Oh,
get them finished.
100%.
Oh yeah.
It's like the shiny object syndrome, right?
Yeah.
You're in the middle of something, and then someone offers you something else, or you hear someone else. Like, there's all these podcasts, and we have so much information out there that, I mean, it happens to me all the time. It even happens to my husband, who he has his own company, and he's an entrepreneur as well. We're just wired differently. And I sometimes am the one that's also reminding him, we need to keep the thing. Like,
Yeah.
that sounds like great, and I'm really happy for so and so. Or I mean, wow, it does. Let's learn more about it, but it doesn't mean we're gonna now start a new business or start this thing. And I've done it in the past where I thought I was bringing like supplemental offerings to my business, or even something unrelated, and it's never worked because I haven't done it 100%. And so it ends up being a time suck, a resource suck. And then, so now I've learned, like, I just got to keep the thing. And if I have bandwidth, then great, let's test something new, because we can always add, and that's great, but it's not about how much you can do. It's about what can you do well, do it in excellence. And then, we have kids. And so balancing life, like, if I didn't have kids, I would probably just work, 18-hour days.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm alive when I'm working. And so it's not a chore.
Yep. Yep.
But, we're not just workers. We have to have our time away. And anyway, so
I totally fall into that category as well. So like as an entrepreneur, like working, it just fills my soul. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm creating, I'm doing something. It's like I'm learning. Oh God, don't get me started on learning. I could if someone would pay me to just learn, I would just learn forever.
Yeah.
So, but my husband's always like, you don't need another podcast, you don't need another class, but whatever. But I think that that's so true. It is such a balance, especially for you when you love what you do. When you love
Mm-hmm.
what you do, I could totally take all my days off and focus on working on my business.
Mm-hmm.
But we have grown children and we have two grandchildren. So my
Mm.
husband is always reeling me back in. He's like, we need to get the grandkids, we need to have
Mm-hmm.
them come over and spend time with us and, be
Yeah.
that influence in their life. And I'm like, oh, but I could be working, like I could work all day. And he's like, no,
Yeah.
And so that is definitely a different balance when you have children at home or when you have grandchildren like I do. It's hard because you want to work and you get such a satisfaction from that.
Mm-hmm.
So, taking that break is so needed. Now, what I don't have a problem with is taking vacations. I
Mm-hmm.
am all about going somewhere. So I'm
Yes.
either working or I want to
Same.
travel. And my husband's like, no, we have to stay home and get the grandkids and like spend time with them. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I love them. I love them. But that's a balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it. That's one of the reasons we also like to travel, because when we're home, like I'll sneak into my office, like I have a home office. And so I'll sneak in and I'm like, I'm just gonna do this one thing. And then 3 hours later,
Yes.
and he's the same, we're both like always doing something. But if we're away, I don't have my home office. And depending, like I'm going on vacation in a few days and I am not taking my laptop. Last summer
Yeah.
I did the same thing. It was the first time I did not take my laptop. And I thought I could do most of the things on my phone if I need to sign a document or, some emergency. It tends to be so funny. Every time I'm traveling, like we're closing on something. And so there's always like documents and things. And then I thought, okay, well, also it's 2024. If I need to go somewhere, print something, scan it, I will find it's, either at the hotel or a little business center or something. And so, because if I take my laptop, I will open it every morning and I will just get some things done. And I've learned that I just want to be on vacation and that's it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can do it and sometimes you can't. It just depends on the season. But yes,
Yeah.
I can relate to that also, just being all in, or okay, then we're going on vacation and then I'm completely disconnected.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the great things. I would say my most favorite thing, and I know this is going to sound very frivolous, but my most favorite thing about owning my own business is, girl, making my own schedule. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love not having to request off. I
Mm-hmm.
love that I can just, even the way that I have structured my company is when I'm not here, my business is still making money. My
Mm-hmm.
nurse is still here. She's still seeing patients. She's still doing follow-ups. I think that that's the key. It's like, so many times, especially as nurse practitioners, we get lost in the fact that we have to be the ones to be there. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't,
Mm-hmm.
you can set your practice up so that it makes money while you're off. And that's the beauty of owning your own business. I want to caution people from, even though I love working, don't become a slave to your business. Being a
Mm-hmm.
business owner should not be you're just another employee.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get that business owner mindset and say, okay, I can take this time off, but you structure your practice so that it's still going while you're not there. That
Yes.
is the best part of it. I make my own schedule. I take off when I want to take off. I'm able to go to conferences. I'm able to join masterminds. I'm able to do
Mm-hmm.
all the things that I could never do working for someone else. But also, I'm not just an employee. I don't have to be there for my business to make money. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the key. When you have to be there for your business to make money, now you're just another employee.
Mhm.
So I think that that's my favorite part, is just being able to do those things, go to the mastermind conference and not have to work, and know that, guess what? I'm here at the mastermind conference and my business is still making money. So
Mhm.
I think that, that's the key to owning a business, is not becoming just another employee.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard because I think when we start, I know for me, when I started, I thought I couldn't leave and I had to do all the things and be present, and the parents would want to see me only, and or be at the desk when pick up and drop off. And there was always something that somebody needed, and I definitely, it took me years, like years to figure that out. It wasn't until I grew and had multiple locations that at that point, I mean, there was only one of me. So really, then people didn't know me because I wasn't their go-to person anymore. And that was either parents or staff. But when I was smaller, I was the go-to person. They knew that I was the owner. And then I would be there open to close 5 days a week. And I also think that there's a little bit, I mean, not a little bit, there is a value in that. You got to earn your stripes. People think that starting a business is just, rainbows and butterflies and you're going to become rich overnight and you never have to show up to work. No.
Yeah.
So, there's seasons and there's that grind and that grit that needs to happen at the beginning. But then the progress is, how can I set things up to provide opportunities for other people, but also a little bit of freedom? And so, this has always been kind of a roller coaster for me. Sometimes the staff is in place and I'm able to step away a lot more. And then sometimes I'm needed a little bit more. But I love what you said, just not having to be controlled by our business. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing when you are an entrepreneur because we think that we're the only ones that can do certain things.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
I mean, I remember I used to say, again, back to that, I'm not a detail person. So I'd delegate something, a task or whatever, and then they wouldn't get done right or how I wanted it. And I'd get so frustrated. And I remember telling myself, see, you can never, I've got to do this. Well, no, the problem was me because I didn't give the right instructions or details or timeline or whatever they needed. It was always me. I was the problem. And so as I learned, I'm like you, I'm like conference junkie, and I started implementing things. And so I was like, oh, so it turns out it was me all along. It wasn't all these other people that I thought it was them. And, it's always about us. Our business is as successful as we are. How are we showing up? How are we working on ourselves? And also, I was talking about this yesterday with a friend. We were saying there's so much knowledge out there, but it's not the knowledge, it's the action we take. So, yeah, we go to conferences, but then what are you actually going to come home and implement?
Yeah.
And I used to get overwhelmed. Like I wanted to do 500 things and not even one got done. So then I would go and be like, okay, I'm going to get 3 things and maybe one really big one and 2 little minor ones. Yep. And just start there. And over the years, things, they compound. The little tweaks and the little things that we adjust, they compound. And then you realize, oh, I ended up doing 500 things over 5 years or 10 years. Yeah. It wasn't going to happen in 1 month. But that led to being able to walk away, to delegate. Yeah. How could I delegate better? It's just like giving the right people, right seats. Not every task is for everyone. That was another mistake I made. They would be like really good at one thing and I could trust them with like whatever, this one task. And so I thought they would be good at everything. And no, it turns out that that's not how, you can't expect everyone to know everything and be good at everything. So there was so much learning. through the
It's
years.
a learning process. And that's the thing. People think, like you said, people think, oh, I'm just going to open my own business and it's going to be amazing. And I'm going to be a millionaire and, all this. But, the truth is, exactly like you said, you have to have that grit and that grind at the beginning. Because when I first started, people look at me now and they're like, oh, you have 2 locations, you make your own schedule, you like do all these things, you have all these things or whatever. And they think that they're going to start their business and be where I'm at 5 years in. But the truth is, when I started, I kept my part-time job. I worked 2 days a week at my part-time job and 2 days a week here. So I was working literally every single day. And then I worked for several months all alone. And then when it got to the point where I needed more help, my husband came on. Then we worked like that, just me and him. And then, several months later, it was time to hire an employee. So it's like, you don't just start the business and bam, you have 2 locations and, 6 employees. No, you put the work in at the front end. And then 5 years later, you can take off and go to the conferences and join the masterminds.
Right.
I couldn't have done that at the very beginning. There's no way. I had to be here.
100%. And I also think like, I know things land now because they make sense to me, right? I think there's something to be said about that too, where I'm sure most conferences have a lot of value, but until you're in it and have issues or situations, and then you're learning about something, it lands better. It makes sense to you because I don't know if you've ever read a book and you're like, okay, this is great. And then a year or 2 or 3 later, you read the same book and you're like, oh my gosh, how did I not catch that? It speaks to you differently because you're in a different season. You have different needs. You're understanding things differently. And so, yeah. So just to leave our listeners with that, like if you're in the startup phase or if you are in the thick of it, and I remember one time I had a breakdown and I was just crying. I had just opened my second location. I was everything at my second location. We couldn't afford to hire all the people that we have now.
Yep.
But it was a huge facility and I was there open to close and Saturdays and Sundays because I was the only office person. So I was like enrolling, touring, phones. I was in the kitchen. So in childcare, in my childcare centers, we have full service everything. We provide diapers, wipes, meals, snacks, full day up to 10 hours care, like everything. Parents just need to drop them off. And so, but that means the operations, there's a lot of moving pieces. So
yeah,
I was constantly like, who needs what? Kitchens are very sensitive because we provide full on hot meals. And it was like different milks and different allergies, and there's lists, and the phone was ringing and somebody would want to show up to tour. And I was just by myself in the office until I built it. And so I think like a year and a half later, and then on the weekends, I would do the paperwork and office stuff and plan for the next week and the schedule for the staff. And I would schedule interviews on the weekends because like during the day, there was just no possible way. So I did all those things. And this was my second rodeo. I had already had the first school. I had set somebody, kind of promoted somebody from there. And so when I moved to the second location, I was just running. And then they would call me from the first one, with questions or needs or situations. And so like a year and a half in, I remember telling my husband, like, what did I do? We weren't making money because now I had 2 locations. And I was just like, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. I remember crying, just like, I should have never done this. I'm not cut out for this. I can't do this anymore. Like I'm exhausted. My parents had moved to help me with the kids. I had little kids. My son was like a year old. My youngest was a year old. And we had to put all our eggs in this basket. And so it was only my husband who was supporting us, thankfully, for many years, by the way. Like I worked building for years before I could get paid.
Right.
Anything significant. Like I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to buy the groceries this month on the business, but that was like my payment, my salary. So it was just for years of this until I had that nervous breakdown. And my husband's like, you just need to hire someone. That's it. Like you can't give up. That's not even an option. And you're going to have to hire help. And then that was a whole other ball game. It took me 3 tries to hire a director.
Yeah.
And so that was like a year and another year and a half ish of trial and error. And because I would have to train them and spend months with them. And, but at least now it was like, okay, you're opening, I'm closing, or I'm closed. I had a little buffer.
Yep.
And I had one steal from me. It was just, they were great teachers. And so then I'd promote them, but that's running a school. It's basically a business that you have to run. So being a teacher a good teacher didn't always translate at being a good director. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I learned, and then, here we are now. We had 6 locations this year. We ended up selling one off, but 5 locations, 700 students, over 150 employees, because it took probably good 4 years between one school and the next to just come up for air,
Yeah.
And it was like 4 years of toughness. So anyway, all that to say, it is grit and grind. And on the other side of the hard is, okay, I can go to a conference. By the way, there was a specific conference that I wanted to go that was childcare specific that came to Phoenix, which is where I was. There was no way for me to travel. Like, first of all, I didn't have the finances to travel or leave my schools for 3 days or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, the conference is here. I have to go. That was the biggest break for me. Going to this specific conference, I learned a few things, and then I met other crazy people like me. And so you're like, okay, and that was like the start of, I could do this. I got help. I read the books. I heard the things. But they all landed at the time. Had I had all that information before I started, I might have not understood,
Yeah.
it all landed well because I was in the thick of it.
Yeah. I think that, another thing that sometimes people don't think about is, and I know and I always tell new business owners this, and I'm sure they think I'm a little weird when I say this, and maybe you can understand, your business is almost like a living being. It's like a child, in the sense that if you neglect it, it does not do well. It's almost like it knows when you're there. Like when I first opened and I was only working 2 days a week, it's like my business knew when I was there. Oh, I had phone calls. I had people walking in. But then I was like, okay, 2 days a week, it's just kind of like dormant and dead. So you really have to think that your business is a living entity. And just like a baby, the more attention you give it, the more it thrives. So a lot of times, just like you saying, you had to take that step and hire that employee. Sometimes, even if you feel like you're not ready, you have to take that next step. Because if you stay stagnant because you're like, I don't know if I can afford it, I don't know if it's time. If you stay stagnant, your business will not grow. You have to make that next step. You have to hire that employee. You have to open that second day. You have to cut back on your other part-time job and give more days to this one. Like, you have to do that before you feel ready, because the more stagnant you stay, the longer it will take to grow and to be successful.
100%. Yeah. It's always like what comes before the chicken or the egg, but, it's part of those risks that you need to take, when we're not ready. And most of us, and I would say all the people that I know that are successful, they can tell you, I always did stuff not being ready.
Yep.
I just did it, and you learn along the way, and getting help and asking questions and surrounding yourself with support system. And, I've always had that even before I paid for it. It was I don't know if you've ever heard of Score, just like
Yeah.
Score, like a game, Score. That was like early on some of the resources I used, and it was free. It's volunteer. And of course, like the, Chamber of Commerce, there's always going to be some sort of classes and people you network. And I mean, there are resources all over. So, if you're listening to this and you think, well, I still don't have the funds to pay for mastermind or to that could be the goal, but you start somewhere, and it leads everything that I have ever done has always been because someone helped me or they connected me or gave me a referral. And that's just being out there and talking with people and not feeling like you're too good to ask questions. We are all figuring it out. And even now that I have an established company with a lot of people, I have never built that. So I encounter new challenges that this is new to me. So I still have challenges, and it's okay to ask for help and ask questions. And I think it's invaluable to just know that there are people that do want to see you succeed and that they're going to help you. Not everyone, but most people really do want to help, so.
And just like you said, there's so much free information. You don't have to start a business and then join a mastermind. That was 5 years down the road when I joined my first mastermind. Up until then, I read books, I watched podcasts. There are so many resources. YouTube is, good Lord, invaluable with so much information that can help you. You don't have to, join a mastermind. You don't have to do all those things. There are so many free resources. And then when you're ready, you can step into those other things. But there's all the information you could ever want, all the encouragement you could ever want with free things out there.
100%. Oh my gosh. Well, Candy, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm excited for you to see, what's next for you and all the beautiful things that you'll continue to do. And helping people get healthy is what a gift that is and what a tool you have. So my hats off to you. Candy, where can our listeners find you?
So right now I'm moving into my next phase of evolution, and I'm going to be transitioning from seeing patients 4 days a week. So I'm going to go down to 2 days a week because I'm getting back into consulting, and I'm going to be helping other female nurse practitioners open a practice just like mine, or whatever kind they want. So, but like my business is called Definite Wellness. And so I have Instagram, I have Facebook for that. And then I've created the Women Nurse Practitioner Entrepreneurs Network. And so that's my next thing where I'm going to focus on helping other women nurse practitioners leave their 9 to 5 and enjoy the freedom that comes with owning your own practice, because they can do it. So, but yes, they can see me right now at Definite Wellness, and I have Women Nurse Practitioner Entrepreneurs Network on Instagram right now, and then I'll be growing that coming up.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to link all your information in the description. And once again, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom. And
thank you for having me. Yes. Bye.
Till next time.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode. If you're struggling to find your flow in juggling all the things that go into building and scaling your dreams, while also being present for your family and finding time to take care of you, I want to invite you to join my free 21-day challenge, Tame the Chaos. You'll get my tried and true time management workbook designed to help you become a master at organizing and prioritizing how you spend your time. Plus, I'm going to walk you through a daily exercise that will transform chaos into clarity and keep you on track to creating momentum towards your goals. I personally use this method myself, and it is a vital key to my success over the years. Please visit marthapachow.com/tamethechaos to register for the challenge now and get instant access to the workbook. And if you've enjoyed today's tea, make sure to follow, rate, and leave a review. Stay connected with us on social media at The Tea with Martha for updates and behind the scenes moments. Remember, every woman's story is a sip of inspiration, and together we're brewing success. This is Martha signing off. Cheers.